What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Raptors 2K podcast, brought to you by our friends at UberEats. I am EE, aka Phil. This is my boy Shane. We are here for episode number 12. We're in the double digits. We're really piling and stacking these together, but it's been a couple weeks since we last talked, Shane, compared to the kind of compiled ones we had back to back a few weeks ago. So how have you been, my friend?
I've been good, man. I've been good. Yeah, the Raptors season ended, so tuned in for that. Hoped for a bit of a different outcome, but got to see the guys before they left. I think we may have talked after the last time I went out with them, but they're all back now, back home for the off season. But it's been great. Kenny and Saint have been streaming on the Raptors Twitch channel, and I know that the team is keeping up with some awesome content that's been pumping out. So that's cool. And then, looking forward to, in my advisory role, getting involved in the decisions that have to be made come October, where we've got to decide, who we're bringing back next season, who we're using our player retentions for, and, whether we're going to use a protection. And I guess the last thing is just, Sam Fans are making some awesome tutorial tips and tricks type content on both YouTube and TikTok. What about you?
Man, for me, I've been just doing my hosting and commentating for events, within the esports space. TwitchCon's in a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to slide up there since it's not too far away, meet a couple people and just have a good time. So all things are good
may see you there.
on my end. Yeah, you're pulling up?
I think so. Yeah, we're talking to our agent for AMP about heading out there just to chat with some brands and stuff like that. We got a couple cool things we're working on for AMP, so it's a good spot to go to do a little networking, have some of those conversations.
Oh, absolutely, man. Like last time I went to TwitchCon, I felt like it wasn't a waste of time, right? It was very good. So I think because of like the brand you're attached to, that's a huge networking opportunity for you guys. So yes, love to hear that for you. I did want to touch on something you mentioned earlier in the opening. You said that you have to decide on retaining players and stuff like that. You guys have like an idea who you're bringing back?
Well, again, I mean, I'm an advisor, right? So
Spoilers?
I would say, well, one, it's not my leak to leak, and that would be ill-advised anyway. But two, ultimately, I'm just there to kind of provide input. It's going to be Kev and Bryce and Sumit who make those decisions for the group. But it's tough because we have tons of talent. I think like on paper, you look at our team this year coming into the season, we all expected us to do, better than we did. And yet we didn't. So it's like, what do you do, right? You have talent, but it didn't work. Is it just missing one or two pieces? Does it need to be blown up? Like those are obviously the tough conversations that have to happen. And I would say like, from my experience, having done this for them for, a few years there, 4 or 5 years there, we explore all opportunities. Like there's nothing that we reserve. Everything goes on the table. Like what if we did this? What if we did that? And we kind of just run through a thought experiment of every possible option that we have on the table.
Is there any salt at all, do you think, amongst the players or organizations that Dimes left and Witten won a title?
Not only did he win a title, he finals MVP. So,
pretty damn impressive, I'm not gonna
lie. We should acknowledge that. That is a good elephant in the room to acknowledge. I mean, I texted him right when I found out that he had won. I wasn't watching the finals, unfortunately. I watched a couple of rounds prior to that, but was unavailable. Anyway, texted him, super happy for him. I mean, man, Dimes is, he's been here. He's dealt with a lot too. You come in, you're hyped up, you're the number 1 overall pick in the first ever draft. And like, there was just so much attention on the 2K League that first year, getting so much media exposure, all these pressure and expectations. And then like very famously, he and Dayfry split up and the Mavs went with him, after season 1 and Dayfry went off to the Wizards and had a terrible season. And, and then when became arguably the best player in the league, top player in the league for sure, if not him, maybe his point guard JBM, but now multi-time champion and 2-time champion, and doing it now without JBM as well. Obviously, they didn't win a championship, but had just a ton of success this year for a team that, like, honestly, when we were looking at our depth charts, like, we were thinking, like, try to do some deals, get some of their picks if we had to, because, we had multiple options to get guards, and they were kind of drafting so late, and we figured their picks are going to be worth a lot next year because they're just not going to be able to compete without a top guard, and they did. They smoked us for sure. So, but to tie that back to Dimes, all kinds of pressure, and obviously when, we traded for him, I think, people were like, oh, is this kind of his last chance? And I certainly wondered if that was the case. And, when we decided to, trade him out and again, just kind of playing like a, arm's length, role in that as an advisor, ultimately it's the, core team management's decision to make. But when we did that, I thought, man, if this might be it, after the Bucks season, right? Because the Bucks weren't looking that good at that point either. And for them to come back, man. Yeah, go ahead.
Shane, can we pause for a second? Pick up. I smell something, and I don't know if there's an oven on or something on the pot. Just give me a second, because I don't.
Yeah, do your thing.
We've
Make
had
sure
this
the
happen
house isn't
before.
going to
My
burn
roommates.
down.
Give me 1 second. I'm so sorry, bro.
Yeah, dude, all good. So
Yeah,
no fire,
please,
Phil. Everything's good.
no fire, no fire, no fire, no fire.
All
Oven was
right.
on, but nothing was burning. It's fine.
Okay, well, good. Anyway, I was going on, so I'll try to wrap that thought up. Anyway, point being, Dimes has undoubtedly re-solidified himself as being a top player in this league. After what he did,
Definitely.
and got himself, extended the runway for sure on his career. And I love to see it. I know 2K. He identifies so much with 2K. It's such a big part of who he and what he is, and he wants it so damn bad. So really, really happy to see that happen for him. And listen, like I mean, certainly I was surprised. That was like a Cinderella run. It was, definitely totally unexpected that the Bucks would, turn that around and win the championship the way that they did. Like maybe the greatest. I think I heard Harris say on the broadcast, like the greatest, storyline in 2K history. It's kind of like that Cinderella story that like I always felt at times a Raptors uprising could have been, like season 1 for sure, when we went from bottom of the league to 4th heading into the playoffs, but never were able to pull it off, and they were. And I can only imagine how amazing that would feel, because I remember how much I wanted it back in the day. And yeah, like goes to show you again, like coming into the season on paper, man, I was just so confident. And we really worked with Dimes in the offseason to kind of, talk to him about becoming a center, right? And look at how it worked out for him on the Bucks. So it's really awesome, development for him, and very humble and proud of him. And I think no ill will certainly from this side. At the end of the day, when you're putting a 2K team together, it's just like it's a puzzle. Is it going to fit or is it not going to fit? Management didn't have any major issues. It was just we couldn't get the chemistry right outside of the game, right? And so we had to make a change.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. At the end of the day, it is what it is. I love the fact you guys are still like homies about it, like nothing but professional. That's I think the mark of just a great organization. So nothing but respect for you, of course, and the Raptors crew. You mentioned having to change things up a little bit. I think we're changing up a little bit for this podcast because our guest a little bit different, not really in the 2K space, right? More of an NHL guy, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he is standing by. Our friend No Sleeves is in the building. If we want to bring him in to the 3 box, that would be sick.
Hey guys,
Killer Cam. What's up, Cam? Good to see you, buddy.
There we go. Hey man, thank you guys for having me on. And yeah, definitely more of an NHL guy, but I'm getting my feet wet in the 2K league space, and no, I'm really excited to talk to you guys.
Cam, 1 sec. I think Phil said this is episode 12. I got to tell you, every episode I've given Phil his flowers, because he is the consummate professional who just keeps the trains on time, makes sure we hit the sponsor reads. He never misses. 12 episodes, he has not missed once. And today we're going to cut him some slack because he thought his apartment might have been burning down. He was frustrated with his roommates. He came running into the room all flustered, and he just threw to you. But we do have to acknowledge the great people and service over at UberEats, because they're the ones who make this podcast possible. And I say this every time, but it is my favorite delivery app. Even when I go to certain cities and they're like, nah, this is really, this brand, that operates, that kind of dominates this market. I'm like, no, I'm a loyal UberEats user, because I just find the service so good. And so we have to place our UberEats orders before we get into the interview, Cam.
Let's go.
And listen, Cam, normally it's just the hosts, but today we're going to extend the offer to you as our guest, who is now part of the order, because it would just be rude to order in front of you. So pull out your phone, and we'll make sure we hit you back with the reimbursement. Let us know what you're ordering for lunch.
All right.
It is always
what are we getting from Uber. I'm a big Uber Eats guy.
Yeah, so. Uber Eats is crisp, and it's probably better. I wish my roommates would take some notes on that, because it's probably safer than them attempting to cook and leave the oven on and cause me some dismay. So I apologize for that, but we're all good over here. I placed my order for some sushi rolls, actually.
Oh,
Phil is always on that sushi. It's either
I'm a big
what are the bowls
guy.
called? What are the bowls called again?
Oh, poke.
Poke, yeah, he's always doing poke or sushi rolls or whatnot. Yeah, I'm a big sushi guy too, but I will say there's one sushi restaurant that you can only eat at that is north of here that is so good that I always save my sushi meals for going up there and eating in the restaurant, because it's kind of like an old school restaurant, so they're not on, with the technology yet. But I also just moved, as I mentioned, and so there's a whole bunch of new options in my vicinity. I think I might get a veal sandwich.
Oh, that sounds crisp.
I'm gonna go with chicken and salad from Swiss Chalet. I think that might be it.
I had Swiss Chalet when I landed from a flight the other night. I love a good Swiss Chalet order.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
And Phil, as I was telling you in the opening, I did just move. A lot of my stuff is in boxes, and so this is where I have to have a little bit of like a pre mea culpa. So as Phil and all of our regular listeners, whoever's out there would know, Phil every week loses the race. I always get my delivery first. I'm here to tell you folks, show business is all smoke and mirrors. I'm about to open up the curtain and let you know it's not that the food teleports into my room, into that bag and wins every single time. It's that I'm the one who have the branded bags. And so I make the doorbell sound. Actually, there isn't even a doorbell sound. We do it in post. And then I just kind of shake the bag in front of you.
No,
we are actually ordering Uber Eats. We are actually ordering Uber Eats. I love it, but the bag is all for show. It's just branding. And today, unfortunately, I do not have the bag, and so there will be no winning of the delivery. And so, Phil, maybe we'll let you call it today. I know you have somewhere to be as well, so you tell us when you hear your doorbell ring, and we'll add that in post.
It would be nice to finally win one. And I'll tell you what, if we have to curate it and make it so in that fashion, I will absolutely take it. So
what happens if I win? What if I win, man?
Cam's just going to call the interview at some point.
That's it. Sorry, boys.
Cam's just going to call it. All right, boys, that's the show. Did you hear my doorbell? Let's wrap this up here. Well, listen, I'll break the ice. So Cam and I go way back now, it feels like.
Yeah.
We've talked about a couple times on the show, when I was working full-time at MLSE, it wasn't just Raptors Uprising, but we also had a cool program with the Maple Leafs called NoSleevesGaming League, and that really went through like a lot of evolutions. Very different than the 2K League, whereas like the 2K League's all run by the NBA, and we're one of the franchises, and we have a lot to do within our market. The NHL stuff is kind of like do what you want within your own market, and so we basically ran our own tournament system, ran our own league. Cam's been involved in a lot of the NHL team programs, and we met back in the beginning. I mean, I really didn't know what trajectory he was on. He was just like one of the players who came to the LAN events. He had this whole shtick. His name's NoSleevesGaming, so he would be sleeveless at all of the LANs. And what ended up happening was we interviewed him for some content, and he was like by far the best interview. So I really wanted to use him in the edit. We interviewed like all the players who were there, and he was the best. And I sent it to the Leaf Social. They're like, dude, we can't show the sleeveless guy. Like, come on, this guy's got to put some sleeves on if we're going to use him in the content. So I told him like the next LAN, make sure you wear a shirt.
Dude, it's so funny, man, because I never thought I would, get to the spot where I was, even as a full-time creator. So like back when I started, I did not anticipate if I could go and do it again, like I would not have this as my gimmick. But me and Shane have had a few times like the Leafs Gaming League where we've been, connected at that point. But there has been some of the bigger monumental things that I do now as like in my career have all been pretty influenced for me. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like full suit when I go to events, like all that kind of stuff. And that's mostly influenced because the Leafs Gaming League was like one of the first events, like when the NHL started doing like esports things. And I still remember that because I remember like, man, I got to get on camera. I just got to be at all these events. And you were like, yeah, we can't use you when you do that. I'm like, all right, well, that's enough of that. Like, I don't care about my gimmick. I don't care that at all. I definitely have influenced me there on that aspect. Yeah, full suit now if I go to an event that I'm casting. So definitely thank you for that one.
Yeah, well, man, it's been great because I've watched your come up truly, right? Like you said, like you came out, you definitely like had an idea that you kind of wanted to get into content. But I remember when you kind of announced you were doing it full time, and I think you found some really good opportunities. Obviously I think the partnership with League Gaming, opened up a lot of doors, and shout out Tristan over there because he's one of the OGs who kind of runs a lot of the stuff behind the scenes in the Chell community, and I know Cam was heavily involved with that. And I think that helped a lot. But awesome to see because when I look at like an esport like NHL, it just wasn't that big, right? And you've kind of like, there's only so much room for people who can do it like for a living, I would say, right? Like, I don't want to say it's not like a zero-sum game because I never think that, any of this stuff is, but you got kind of Nasher kind of consuming a lot of the brand attention and kind of getting the NHL level deals opening up for him. And then it's like, there just isn't that much else that you can really, eat off in such a small kind of esport, but you found a way and you did it and you opened those doors and, I think you got diversified and got into like other games and off seasons and stuff like that, and by all accounts killing it now. So it's awesome.
I appreciate that. Thank you for pumping the tires. But I think I went in at such a unique time in my life. Like I was older. Like I was 29 when I decided to go full time, and at the time it was probably too early, but my wife gave me like the okay to go and try it for 2 years. And thank God
wife?
that, thank God that I was able to do that. Because it turned out better than anything I would have ever imagined. There's times where it's not always fun, but because it is a job and it is a career and things that you've got to do. There's times where I don't feel like streaming and you've got to show up. But I think that I was not fulfilling my passion. I liked my job that I was doing before. I had an office job, but it was just like this was going to be it for the rest of my life. Essentially, I'd already gone to school and all of that. And this is really what it's going to be. So I will say this with like NHL. I think that there was no one really that was like a full-time creator other than Nasher, essentially. But he was so high and above that there's a huge gap. And when someone paves the way and does something and gets into a space, it doesn't just mean that's it for the rest. Like, eventually if he decides to move on, there needs to be that second person. So I was trying to find, I knew the NHL community on Twitch and YouTube. It wasn't going to be enough to just do those. Like I had to do more stuff. So I remember watching the Gaming World Championship, the NHL's first big marquee event, 2018, kind of came out of nowhere. And after I saw it, I watched the finals and I was like, I got to be involved in this somehow, some way. I have no idea how. I had like 3,000 YouTube subs at the time. I was averaging like 10 viewers a stream, but I was like, I got to figure out a way here. The Leafs Gaming League, that first one at like Real Sports. You remember that? I think you were on that first season. Yeah. Because I don't know if I met you
Leafs Gaming Day.
At that first one, that very first one, because it was so busy. It was packed.
Yeah. Oh, it was a huge event. We had FaZe Clan there. We had our own 5K tournament. We had the whole Leafs team there shooting a video series. Like that actually was like too much. We took on like 3 different things in one event in one venue. It was crazy, man. Like it was the same day as the Toronto Marathon, and we were trending higher on Twitter than the Toronto Marathon was. Like
it was not.
Damn,
and
dude.
I was a guest of someone that was competing, and he was the only one in the community that I knew. But I was like, I need to get in. I need to be invited because I didn't even compete in that.
Wow, you were that on the outskirts at that point. I had no idea.
Yeah, like junior pens. Like Dave gave me my first. We had talked because he messaged me after he finished second in the world. He goes, "Hey man, I just want to let you know, I used your strategies from your videos and I got second at GWC." And I remember being like I was like,
W-Mans, what a shout out! I love that.
I was like, humble. I had 3,000 subs at the time. I was like, oh my god, okay, sweet. So we became friends, and then he qualified for that, and he drove up from Pittsburgh, and I was just his guest. And then I met everyone there. I remember I met meeting Bones, and Bones was still really high in the community because he was still. I think it was at the tail end of him making content full time or like a majority of it. And then I just made sure that I was at every single event possible. And I remember the second year of Leafs Gaming because I was again a guest at the final for season 1. I was in the box at the game, but I didn't know anyone. And I remember I just had my thought process was like, as long as I'm there and there's a picture of me being there, if I can do that at every event, people will start being like, this guy's at every esports event, right? Like that was my thought process. Yeah. So the second year, I knew I had to be at the event, and I was still okay at the game. Like I'm still pretty good. I play it full time. I can't compete anymore. That's why I'm casting. But I qualified. Because Shane, I think I messaged you, and I wasn't a part of the broadcast because you had TDI and Bones, and I was hurt by that. I was like, I got to get in. I got to find a way to get. I got to be there. And I'm pretty sure you said no guests because it was a ladder, so there were so many people already there. So I was like, I just got to qualify. So I literally grinded to qualify to make it there so I could get in there. And I had no interest. I didn't care at all if I did well. Like I was like, I just got to get there. I talked to you at every single one. I made sure I was always around like the documentary crew that you had, who are amazing, by the way. And I'm pretty sure they do stuff for the Raptors 2K because I saw
they do Northcote and a lot of the stuff that
so good. Yeah. Like they were phenomenal. And so I was there, and then you said the same thing about the got to put a shirt on. So I was like, okay, that's enough of that. So I showed up at the next one, same thing. And then I think there was an issue where the internet was an issue or something. I don't remember the facility, the power outage. I think it was like province-wide, and you had to do it online. And,
right. Oh, I forgot about that.
And one of the casters like couldn't make it, so you asked me to fill in for him with Bones, and like that was like one of my first ever events. So I just went and did that. Like that's how I just kept putting myself around so that if someone couldn't happen, and it's happened in pretty much every instance as I've gotten further and further in my career in terms of esports and casting. So it's
just step by step, really man. Fun. I love that story. Yeah. That's step by step. Like I tell people that all the time. It's like, you got to know like the general direction you want to go, or have some lofty goal that you're so far from that you don't know how to get there, but take the first step and then take the next step and then take the next step. And I felt like that's what you were doing. It's like, and I think like perseverance is like the most important thing. If you do it long enough, you survive long enough, you're always out there putting a good foot forward, being proactive, being productive, your network will expand. Like you said, people will see you there. It's the same thing with Johnny. Shout out Johnny behind the scenes producing. He works full time now on MLSE esports, and he was the same thing, and like even like longer before we brought him into the program, he was just, every time I showed up at the studio and I would be there hours before everyone, Johnny would be there waiting. It's like the thing started at noon. Johnny's there at 8 in the morning, like sitting in the cold, waiting outside the studio. And I was like, okay, this guy's committed. And then, gave him some opportunities. And then the big season was when we had you, Nasher, Johnny, and Bones all be the GMs. And I feel like that's when we really integrated you all into Leafs Gaming League. And that was our best season, in my opinion.
100%. And it's still one of the most unique events ever done from like just like a content standpoint. Was so good. Like I loved that. John, it's so funny because I met Johnny early on just in the NHL community, and we were just competing because we were both doing the same thing. Like we weren't. I don't think our goals were the same, but we were both like we have to be involved in NHL esports, and we had no idea how. So I remember refreshing team websites to find out when they were going to announce like a tournament. And Johnny, like out of a holster, his phone would go off, and like he would get out 5 tweets that would have all the information like 5 seconds after. I was still working, so like I'd be so mad. I'd be taking my lunch to try and like come up with a tweet, and Johnny was always the master at it. And it ended up like his like desire and like what he was trying to do was be involved from the admin side. And once I realized that like I just want to be like content wise, now I mean like I'm here all because of Johnny. Like it's all those kind of relationships. I remember there was a great story, like one of the first event I got asked just to help with. I wasn't even casting. But it ended up being one of the most like influential events probably in my career. A company was trying to do something for the Red Wings, and me and Johnny got invited to just make sure the stream went well. Like we weren't in charge of anything. We weren't casting, and I met Arda there, Arda Cal, who was probably probably one of the biggest people in terms of just opportunity. He was so selfless in terms of opportunities. I met him there, and Dirk was the other caster. So I met Dirk there. He was doing an NHL event. Like it was wild. So I've known Dirk ever since I think it might have been 2018, winter of 2018 or 2019. I don't remember which one, but man. So on the way home though, we drove to Detroit.
The Blizzard story. I was told to ask about the Blizzard story. Okay,
I picked up Johnny in Windsor or in Waterloo and had to drive on the way back. Man, it was. I have never seen that much snow in my life. Johnny was in the back seat in between me and TDI, and he was basically showing me the GPS of where I was supposed to like just kind of like the highway would just kind of curve, and I was just like following the GPS mark because we couldn't see. It was wild, but like those are the kind of stories like I at the time like I said, me and Johnny were like competing just to be involved, and you don't know we never were. There was never any animosity though. It was always like, okay, like respect. And then like we ended up finding a way to work together. Like, and now, like Amazing. He's one of my closest friends in the community now. And, like I said, I'm so happy when he got the job, working for the Raptors 2K team. And, he blessed me with an opportunity to do the pregame for it. And it introduced me to the 2K league, which I've loved so far. So.
I mean, that's an amazing story. Like, it's interesting you what you said, like about like having the opportunity to kind of pursue what you want to do. Because I was kind of like that as well. I did it at a little bit of a younger age. I didn't have a wife, so I can only imagine the pressure for you was a little more mounting as the time ticked on. Did you have like what was like the fallback in case everything didn't work out for you?
Oh man, it's funny because like my old man, he is the operations manager for Niagara Transit. He's basically he runs all the buses and transportation in the Niagara region. And I knew that if something didn't work out, I'd go be a bus driver. And it's a good career. I'm not gonna lie, it's very good. Right. But I didn't want to do that. And I think I get it from my mom. Like she's very creative, and I always she's a pretty big dreamer, right? My dad is more of like you work 50 hours a week, you got to do what you got to do. And I think I've combined those things. I was blessed from my parents in those aspects. And, I had a vision that I remember watching Twitch for the first time, like in 2015 and just being like, this is so much fun. Like, I feel like I could do this. And I had no idea how I was going to get it done, but I liked the NHL video game and just kind of started from there. But in terms of like a fallback, I really didn't think of it like that. Like I knew my first year, it was like I need to make enough money a month where I don't cost my wife anything. Because you touched on that. Like as you get older, the responsibilities add up. Like if we don't have a kid yet, and if we had a kid, like that means you got to make more money on your side hustle before you can go in because you have a responsibility first. It's not fair to them to go after your dreams without, making sure that their life is, impacted negatively because that's not really fair. And I was at a point where my wife was like, just try, like, we'll give it 2 years. If it doesn't work in 2 years, we've lost 2 years and, I'm 30 and, I got the rest of my life ahead of me. And that was kind of the aspect of it. 2020 was a nerve wracking. It was the first couple months. It was like, man, I think I had 10,000 YouTube subs and Twitch was not where it was at all for me. And then I think NHL 20 hit. And I went full. I released 600 YouTube videos. I streamed, I was streaming like 8 hours a day, and I took every event that I possibly could. There was a point I always talk about this in December, I think of 2020 or 2019 going into 2020, where it was like Monday, Tuesday, I had an event for the Sharks. On Thursday, I had something for the Lightning, Capitals on the Thursday, and the Blue Jackets on the Friday. And Saturday was my only day where I didn't have anything. And that was on top of me releasing YouTube videos and streaming at least 4 to 5 hours every day. And I remember being like, I don't know if this is not possible to keep going. And like that evolves. And then you learn that, once you've gotten your opportunities and delivered on them, you can kind of, take the bigger ones, and that's kind of the thing I've had the hardest part with it in my career. Cause there's no roadmap. Like if Nasher is the biggest in the NHL community, and there's lots of guys that have insane followings in the 2K community. Like you don't go into it being like, I'm going to be like them, because it's not really realistic in the beginning. But you've got to, there's no roadmap to how you're supposed to do it in social media and in gaming and content creation. There's no real roadmap for it. So I was just like, if I just keep working constantly, something, and my opportunities kept coming, and that was it. I just wanted the opportunity because I was confident enough that if I got, a gig or the option to be in front of a big audience for something that I was confident enough I would do well enough. And it was just getting the opportunities are tough. Those are the hard part. But once, you get those there's a sense to know, like, you've got the Leafs Game League is a perfect example. Like Shane was probably the scariest guy to work for because he demands like I don't want to say perfection, but he very, very serious. And that's why all the content that you're involved with, man, that I've seen has been so good, because you have this like sense of professionalism, and things need to go right, which is huge. And, so I remember being terrified for the Leafs Gaming League. I remember, but getting that opportunity, I was like, no, I know it'll be good. And it went really well. Like, what I mean? And meeting you after behind the scenes, it's not like that, right? Like, I know you're like, and like I said, you have a lot of insights in the industry, and meeting people like you has been like the biggest thing for me in terms of growing my career, because again, we've only had like in person, like maybe a couple interactions, but some of those are like I said, I show up to an event in this full suit every single time. My gimmick may be NoSleevesGaming, but I do not wear the cutoff shirts anymore. Let me tell you.
Yeah, no, I love running into guys like you, people who are kind of taking the industry seriously at events like that, because I can talk shop all day. Like small chats kind of tough for me in some social situations. Like I feel like there's those like memes that go around where you see like extroverts, they go to social situations, they gain energy. Like even though most people who know me through things like this and whatnot would think I'm extroverted, I feel the opposite. When I go to like a party and I have to make like real small chat with people who I don't know much about or have anything in common with, it just drains me. It's tough.
Same.
But I get, I get to a table with you, Bones, and Johnny, real sports before the Leaf game, and I probably sucked all the air out of the room. Like I could just talk all day because, for whatever it is, I think, guys like us just love what we do. And I heard a lot of consistency there with things that like the A&P guys say whenever they're asked, like, what do you say to like content creators coming up? It's like, you got to love it. You got to be obsessed with the process. You can't be so laser focused on like being big. You have to be like, oh, I got one more view. That's awesome. That's progress. That's growth. You have to be like looking at the little milestones, and you look back and it's like, it feels so slow when you're going through it. But once you've done that cycle a few times, and that's what I'm telling like, the guys at A&P right now, like we're growing every month. But like when we look back in 1 year, it's like to think where we were a year ago. And then you add like another year on that, like it feels so like, what's it like it's just marginal every day, but then in aggregate it adds up so fast, and like you said, like you can't do it at the pace that you have to do it in the beginning forever. But if you do that, if you buy in, if you bite down and do it, you won't have to do it forever. It's like a couple years, right? And you'll really know within the first couple of years whether it's going to go or not. And so at that point, it's like either you're off into a position where you don't need to do that anymore, and now you've essentially accomplished your goal, or you've realized it's not going to work, and then it's on to the next. And it's like, man, as long as you have a plan B, as long as you're hardworking, as long as you've got something you can go and do, and you're not going to end up on the street, then like, what do you have to lose, right?
Exactly. You drilled it with the process. I tell people this all the time. Like, if you don't love the process of editing and coming up with funny clips like organically, like, you are not going to enjoy it. It's funny because people that want to be content creators, a lot of kids, and honestly, that's what the industry is, because it's a lot of video games, right? They see that and they're like, I want to do that. It's like, that's like when I was in the 90s wanting to be like, hey, I want to be a rock star, but I hate guitar. Like, if you don't, like you're a dreamer, like you have a dream to be it, right? But if you don't enjoy the process, you're never going to get there. You're just going to fight it every day, and it's going to feel like what a lot of people, when they go to a job because they need a job, right? Like, that's the downfall. Is like you have to get the means. Also, boys, I apologize, but I won. Like, I got my Uber Eats.
Here's the real plug. What? Here's the real plug. We normally talk for like 45 minutes, and then I pretend like my food arrived. My stuff's usually there, and my fiance's brought it in the house by the time I do that whole thing. So what Cam is revealing here today is the fact that Uber Eats is actually way faster than what we normally indicate when we go 45 minutes, because it's been like 25 minutes and his food's already there. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, but Cam, to tie what you were saying to the 2K League, there's so many personalities, and we were talking about this earlier. Dude. So many personalities in the 2K League, and again, I've had this rant before where I feel like they're coming out of the early era of console gaming. I feel like the pros today in the console space are just a little bit more personality, sometimes on the toxic side of things, whereas PC gamers are a little bit more reserved, I would just say, generally, if I were to cast blanket statements. And I see so many of these guys in the 2K League, and like, I won't name names, but like, one player in particular I can think of, I'm like, dude, make content. He's like, I know, I need an editor, I need this, I need that. I'm like, dude, no you don't. Like, what we're talking about is super simple. The come up requires the simplest content. At the end of the day, like, when you hit a certain level, you'll require a certain production value, but to begin with, the content can be super simple, just jump cut editing, and it's all about you. It's all about your entertainment value. But if you have to pay someone every time you make an edit, you're not going to create enough content before you make enough money to justify paying that much money. You know what I mean?
It's
like,
tough.
It's just not going to work.
It's tough because, like, I feel like a lot of people struggle with, like, especially I feel like this is more with creative people where they get stuck in the whiteboard phase. And you're literally just planning, but never like execute. And I was like that. Yep. I've always been like that. I love like planning and be like, everything's got to be perfect, but like literally never everything's going to be perfect. That's just life. So I remember my first year, it was like, okay, I had just gotten engaged, and I was like, I want to give streaming a shot. And I had tried streaming a video game called Destiny. I loved it. And that was how I found Twitch was two creators at the top of the Destiny directory that I loved watching. And I've now gotten to meet and work with, which is hilarious because it just doesn't.
Full circle, baby.
It's crazy. But I tried that in the summer of, I think, 2016. And then 2017, January 1st, I was like, okay, I'm going to make it my hobby. I'm going to turn it into a real hobby here. So I did all the research I could. And it was like, you got to make YouTube content to drive to Twitch, which just seems so, because one of the worst things I see in the content creation space is like, God, these guys that'll just stream for 12 hours a day to 5 viewers. And I respect the grind, but it is just you are never going to break out. What you're basically hoping for is you're on so much that you're waiting for a host from Ninja or something like along those lines. And like, that's a miracle. I think that, obviously streaming more, you create your own luck by, increasing your luck of something big happening. But you need, if I were to give like a percentage, man, I'm like 50% of my time is on YouTube, 30% of my time is on TikTok, 20% of my time is on Twitch. And that's with the end goal of being a full-time variety Twitch streamer, which I think is like the holy grail of like waking up, playing whatever game you want, and being able
just
to
having an audience that just likes you.
Yeah. That is that's the rock star level of content creation right now, I think. Variety. And to get there, I was like, so my first year, I made one video every single Sunday because I had to work a full-time job. I just gotten engaged. I streamed Monday to Friday, 3 hours before I went to work. And my gimmick that I chose,
3 hours before work. Crazy.
This gets even worse. So I was really out of shape going into 2017, and I was like, I can't have this gimmick online if I'm out of shape. So I would wake up at 5:30, go to the gym, eat my breakfast. Then 9 to 12, I would stream, and then I would go to work from 1 to 9:30. And then I would come home and I would make sure I had my one video every night or every week on Sunday. And I just did that. And I was like, this is something I can sustain. I can, it's tough, obviously, but I feel like a lot of people try to cram everything in. You have to work around the things that you can't change in your life. Like if you have someone, a family member you take care of, or a wife or something like that, or husband, and you know that you need to spend time with them, then that needs to come first. And then you need to plug in the other things around as consistent as you can. So if you have a job where you're working 40 hours a week, that's fine. That's normal. If you're going to start, make sure that you're like, don't try and make a video every single day. That's not possible. So be like, okay, I can do it on this day. I have weekends off. I can make a video on this day, and just stick to that. And that's the best.
Stick to it is the key, right? Like not getting
consistency is the most important.
Perseverance. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
man, what a clinic for. Hopefully, there are some aspiring content creators who are listening to this episode right now, because man, I think the insights.
I love talking
crazy.
about this.
And I know, me too. I know Phil has an errand to get to, but I just want to pivot quickly. So like you said, Johnny called you. You're supposed to be a guest on the pregame show. Our host falls through. I remember being on those morning syncs with the guys, talking about what are we going to do. Johnny's like, well, we could get Cam to do it. I was like, perfect. He'll be able to handle this, no problem. Now you're the host of the pregame show. You're super integrated with Raptors Uprising. You've been, like we were just talking about before this, how because of your vested interest, you started watching the 2K League. It's super watchable. I think there's tons of entertainment value in the 2K League. I will never not say that, because I'm not just a shill. I actually believe it. I loved watching the league when I was working there, and I keep up with it to this day. You're playing 2K23 so far. Like, what's the future for No Sleeves and 2K? Is this a new game for you? Are you going to be in on it?
Pull up, sleeves. Pull up.
I'll be honest with you. Like, I've never been a huge basketball guy. I'm a big sports fan, but I just haven't had a huge vested interest in basketball. The Raptors run. I was glued to that. That was pretty incredible. But in terms of the 2K League, it's funny because like we were talking about these opportunities, and when you get them, you have to make sure that you fulfill on them. And I remember being like, Johnny, I don't think I can do this because I don't have a big vested knowledge in the 2K League. I dabbled them a little bit because of I was involved with the Capitals, and their 2K team was at their height, right? So with WizEG, so I'd followed them a little bit, but outside of that, I really didn't know the ins and outs. And I was like, he was like, just do it. You're good. You'll be fine as a host. And I had just gotten off being on the Gaming World Championship on like Sportsnet and whatnot. So I knew that like I could host, and I really wanted to kind of expand my ability to host. And I felt, I remember sitting with my wife that night that Johnny asked me, and I'm like, if I can host this and it turns out well, I can pretty much host anything because I don't really know much. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
now you're variety, baby.
Exactly. So the first one, I was blessed because Fanta was the interview on the first one that we did, the first pregame show, and he interviewed me. He was so entertaining, a lot like what you said about the a lot of the guys in the 2K League are very vested in content and things like that. He was so good and someone to talk to, and then talk to like Big Saint and Type. All those guys made it so easy. And the one thing I think that might be overlooked in 2K is when you watch the 2K broadcast, Dirk's so good. Like the broadcast is so good. And if you are super into the 2K League, like you are getting some insane information when you were watching that. They're so informed. Definitely. But as someone who's a casual gamer, like I don't really understand like systems and things like that, right? So I found it fun, and I think that something that might be overlooked a little bit is if you're a casual fan of basketball and you're trying to get some more understanding, asking basic questions that you might not know that would just be assumed that every single viewer would know. I think it's something that might be able to be hit on. And I've taken the pregame show and the opportunities I've had with it and a lot of it to ask those 2K players from the Raptors specifically, just like some things that like I'm learning. So like I love to interview them to get knowledge about like the basketball and the scene and like how they're competing and things like that. It's been really fun. And thank you to the Raptors Uprising for hooking me up with a copy of 2K23. The city and like my career is unparalleled in sports games. Like the scope of it is just so impressive. Like I've got to say, like it is the future of all sports games, and they are so far ahead because I don't know how in a yearly cycle when you're making a game every year, how 1 year you're going to be able to build that. So they are so leaps and bounds ahead. I've loved the game so far. And again, I think it's been fun as someone who isn't really knowledgeable about basketball, because now going into this year's NBA season as well, I'm super into the Raptors. Like I'm really, really excited to watch them play. And then the 2K team itself, like Raptors Uprising, I'm really excited to see how the player retention works. Like I'm getting the full off season. I'm really excited to see how that works. Not just from like the on in-game performance, but how it works behind the scenes, because the 2K League is so impressive to me that you've got guys that you fly out and they live in Toronto for 6 months. Like that's wild to me, because I'm in the NHL scene. It's just not that. So I'm really blessed to kind of get a look behind the scenes and get to do things like this. So I'm really excited for next year.
Man, so much insight in there. There's like tons I would want to unpack, but I have a feeling Phil's doorbell's about to ring, and we're going to wrap this thing up. But no, I mean, I totally agree. Like, I was not basketball was definitely like my least of the big sports, my least favorite coming into my role with MLSE. Yep. Obviously, getting to be in the organization for the championship run like did wonders for kind of indoctrinating me. But I learned so much about the game of basketball from managing the 2K League. And I love basketball now. Like I have no problem watching basketball on TV, regular season, mid of the week, doesn't matter what it is. I love the game. So yeah, we've had a similar experience in that sense.
100% agree.
It's interesting. I came in like, I watched a lot of basketball. I've been a basketball fan for a while, but when I was doing the 2K League, so I just kind of got more of an appreciation for it, because a lot of these guys, like for me, it's just like, okay, I just watch it because I enjoy it. Like these guys, like it's their whole life. You know what I'm saying? The fact they're able to kind of live that through the game itself. And that's why I understand how passionate and how seriously they take it. Like this, it's not just something to do. It's not just a job. Like it's like legitimate life passion for these guys. And I'm sure it extends the same, to NHL as well. But it's just like, it's interesting to just be that close to these guys who are actually competing at that level consistently and seeing how much it means to them. And it's even more of a payoff when you know somebody, you know what they've been through, and you see them win a big one. It's really cool.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like that's what I try to ask when I was given a chance to interview some of the guys. Like you see like everyone again trying to have aspirations to get into the 2K League. Like they see that they're being a professional gamer. Like they don't see the day to day and like the stresses. Like this has got to be one of the most stressful periods. I can't imagine, because you don't know if you're going to be retained, and then it's like, are you going to be drafted? Easily. Do you adapt to the new game? Or like again, like I think kind of like in that aspect, like business wise, and I'm just like, man. Like there's a lot of ups and downs, because when the highs are high, you're flying, like you're cruising. Yep. Things can't get better. You're a professional gamer making good money and you're succeeding, but it's like, man, the retention part and the drafts like that can't be fun for a lot of people.
And it's so competitive, man. Like it is such a competitive league, and like imagine. It's not random results. Like who the best teams are. Like it's really it's a good team. It's a good league in esport for betting on, because we're really like the better team does often win, right? I feel like for sports games, how much there is RNG coded into it, like it really doesn't feel like there's RNG in the 2K League. It feels super balanced, super competitive, and for that reason, man, like I tweet this almost every year. It's like all anyone wanted all offseason was just to get drafted. It was just like, I just want to get drafted. That's my dream. I want to play in the 2K League. And like that bubble bursts. That bubble bursts in a week, and reality sets in. And it is stressful. It is tough. There are social dynamics with your teammates. There's like life-changing things. You got to move to new markets, experience different foods, like all kinds of different stuff. Like there was a ton of change. I think it's an amazing experience for a young person to go through from a growth perspective. Sure. And we've talked about it on past episodes with guys like Type. I think some of these guys come into the league and, and it's a sink or swim thing, and some of them do sink, but the ones who swim, I think, just develop as human beings in ways that, they probably would not have been exposed to had they not made the league. So
no, absolutely.
Very well said. Oh, wait, you hear that? It's my doorbell.
There it is.
I'm terrible at selling this. Wow, that was bad. Hopefully Shane finds his bags for the next episode, because that was just terrible. But it's been a great episode. Right?
Yeah, we gotta let Cam get to his before it gets too cold.
Very true.
Yeah, Cam, it's always great having a guest like you on, man. You just carry it for us.
Seriously.
So.
Oh man, I appreciate it.
Another perspective is it means a lot to us, because obviously we love talking to our 2K family, but somebody who's like kind of like learning more about the space in general and interested to get into it, and then just hearing your backstory as well. Definitely another look we like to have on the podcast.
Appreciate that, guys. Appreciate that.
There's a lot smarter guys at 2K than Phil and I. We can go and like learn about the game, but I think on here it's all about telling stories and hopefully inspiring content creators. Honestly, that seems to be a common theme for us. Like we're all kind of in the content creation space, me and Phil in particular, and I think that that's definitely what people are kind of interested in these days. So I think very insightful episode, Cam. Hopefully people, some hard workers out there hear what you just said and they lock in and they're the future content creators.
I hope so as well, my man. It's been a blast. Thank you guys for having me.
Always
absolutely. Yeah, appreciate it, man. And thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been another episode of the Raptors 2K podcast brought to you by UberEats. Great episode. Share it with your friends. Let everybody know, man. This is definitely an inspiring one for sure. Like, comment, subscribe, and we hope to see you on the next one.